69.3. All right, so gender dysphoria affects one person in 10,000 roughly, or that's about 30,000 Americans, which is, I don't know, like 1% of the number of Americans affected by opiate problems. And you're right in that most people with potential gender dysphoria, it clears up. But wouldn't you want to give people the time to see if it's going to clear up, if they're going to decide that they're at home in their current gender, by doing some puberty blockers? I've done the opposite. I've taken, when I was younger, I worked in a bar where like half the staff was on steroids, and half the bouncing staff, and half the staff wasn't. And the steroid half of the staff was aligned with my ex-girlfriend that I'd had a terrible breakup with, who was also a head bouncer at the bar. And the non-steroid half was aligned with me, but I took steroids because I wanted to be as aggressive as the steroid guys. I was intimidated, so I wanted to be. So I took manly man drugs. I got hormonal help, and right now I take a testosterone blocker for my hair and my prostate, which has the side effect of increasing my blood levels of testosterone. So. Hormones can be our friends. It was dumb for me to take steroids, just so I could, hold my own against the steroid bouncers. But I like that, that still have a decently high level of testosterone right now. And I think it's a good idea to give kids extra years to figure out whether they're at home in their biological gender or not. You want prudence. And it also gives you time. You want to send kids to psychiatrists. Well, here's 4 extra years to send kids to psychiatrists, as you want, to help them decide, that they don't want to change their gender.
Before Lance answers, can we just give at the end of the segment, tell the audience we're going to make a big announcement. You're going to make a big announcement.
Oh, I'm going to make a big announcement.
Just say it real quick.
Okay.
But at the end of the segment.
Yes. All right. At the end of this one, or?
This one.
All right. Well, so.
Or at the end of the show.
I don't even know what you're going to say. What are you going to say, Rick?
A thing.
All right. I can't
it
take
should probably come after Kaganaugh.
I can't take it.
But should I talk about physics now?
All right, go ahead, please.
All right. So some people like me talking about physics. There's a thing that's been bugging people about quantum mechanics for around a century, and that's the collapse of the wave function. If you leave particles under quantum mechanics alone, they get fuzzy. Their position, according to any measurement, becomes unclear because you haven't measured them in a while. The longer you go without finding out where a particle is or how fast it's moving or any of the other interactions, the longer that a particle goes without interacting with other particles, the less certain it is in all its characteristics, except the type of particle, maybe even that, I don't know. But this made early thinkers about quantum mechanics crazy. They had all sorts of theories. There was the Copenhagen interpretation, which is that you needed a conscious observer, a person, to observe what the particles were doing and collapse the wave function. The collapse of the wave function is where a fuzzy particle becomes a sharp particle again because you've observed it. It's bounced off another particle, it's bounced off experimental apparatus, and all of a sudden it's sharp in space again until it starts to get fuzzy because as more time passes. And this just, there's a bunch of mathematical problems that are over my head associated with the collapse of the wave function.
How can there be anything over your head?
Because I haven't taken 3 years of quantum mechanics. And and it's been like 35 years since I've looked at the Schrodinger equation, I was never familiar enough with it to see how the collapse of the wave function did and didn't work under the quantum matrices and Schrodinger and the Dirac stuff and all that stuff. But the deal is that a lot of these problems go away if you kind of say, well, it's the universe observes itself. That left to its, if the universe couldn't interact with itself, it would swell up and get fuzzy. But because all the particles in the universe are interacting with each other, the universe stays defined. And we start getting into the many worlds theory because when a particle goes from fuzzy to defined because it's interacted, usually that interaction, that interaction, if it's a quantum interaction, it's one of a number of interactions it could have had, and one of them happened basically at random. And then the many worlds interpretation of that is that it just happened in this way in this world, and it happened in every other possible way in a bunch of other possible worlds that split from our world when the interaction happened. I think there's a way of looking at it that requires fewer worlds, and that is that if you imagine our world as a moment in time, or a string of moments in time, each moment in time has a set of next possible moments according to the rules of quantum mechanics. And one of these moments is the next moment. And then there's a whole string of these going out, so that every quantum wave collapse that happens doesn't happen, it has already happened. That the next possible moment contains some collapsed wave functions that were fuzzy. If you go from moment one with fuzzy particles, a bunch of fuzzy particles, in moment two, some of those particles will have become more precisely defined in space through interaction. And that's it. It's just a string of that each moment in time picks a moment roughly at random from the set of all possible next moments. Though defining a moment under quantum mechanics is tricky because moments are entangled with, they're not precisely limited in time. Anyway, that's enough of that. You want to talk about Kaganaugh?
Go ahead.
All right, so today, it's Sunday, and today the anonymous accuser that said Kaganaugh sexually assaulted her, with the nature of the sexual assault being when he was in high school and she was in high school, she was at a get-together with 4 guys at somebody's house. And
you got to stop moving your thumb.
Okay, sorry. 2 of the guys, Kaganaugh and a guy named Judge, which makes things complicated because he's named Judge and Kaganaugh is a judge, but drunkenly assaulted her. Kaganaugh pushes her onto the bed, attempts to pull her clothes off, turns up the music. One of them turns up the music so any sounds of her screaming can't be heard, puts his hand over her mouth to stop her from screaming, and then she's able to escape when guy number 2, this Judge guy, throws himself on top of both of them, and somehow the dog pile, rolls onto the floor or something, and she's able to get away. And then the Judge guy says that he has no memory of it, that in high school and later he was a blackout drunk, and so he has no memory. Though if you go to his Instagram, it's a pretty rapey Instagram page where he says stuff like, no is no and yes is yes, but sometimes maybe is also yes. And that there's a mystery and majesty in unstoppable male libido or shit like that. So anyway, this comes out today, and if you're watching, the people I watch on interacting, the people I follow on Twitter, this was a big deal. And some Democratic senators are saying we need to talk to him more, Kavanaugh, about this more, and even a couple Republican senators, including Jeff Flake and Bob Corker, are now saying that, yeah, we need to talk to Kavanaugh more about these allegations, about which Kavanaugh has issued a blanket denial. Lance.
Jeff Flake hates Trump, and Bob Corker was the man that brought us the Iran deal that made it possible for them to develop nuclear weapons to shoot at us. So I don't think much of anything they say. I also think that in a sane world, you have to have a moratorium on how far back you go to evaluate whether somebody's qualified for a job. If a man is 52 years old, you cannot go into his record in high school.
Did you attempt to rape anybody in high school?
No, but I do remember being drunk and rolling around on girls and boys, none of whom wanted to be rolled onto at parties. I remember
With
throwing up.
sexual intent?
I remember throwing up on or at people. I remember fighting with people with my fists. That would be assault and battery. I remember having sex with people that I should not have had sex with.
But consensual sex.
Yeah, it was consensual, although, to be honest with you, I'm not sure either of us knew or cared. So my point is that you can't go back to a guy's high school. You just can't. It's not sane, Rick. And it's a measure of how crazy the Democrats are that they're willing to go back to a guy's high school record when he's 52.
Well, what about that he just said that it didn't happen at all?
Well, and thank you for bringing the best argument yet.
Except she passed a polygraph test administered.
Oh God, Rick.
So you thought we're gonna just and
Rick,
she's been.
Rick.
She talked about it in therapy in 2012. She talked about it with another therapist in 2013.
Okay, Rick.
And
I know a judge.
Mm-hmm.
I know a judge. And this judge told me, I can't tell you the name of the judge. This judge told me the worst cases that this judge gets are he said, she said.
But this is he said she was traumatized by this for 35 years, talked about it in therapy in 2012 and 2013, and then passed a polygraph about it administered by an FBI guy.
And he said it didn't happen.
He issued a blanket denial.
Okay. So now, I'm sorry. I know that this isn't cool. I know this isn't. You know what? I'm going to go on record as saying this is very backwards of me, and it harkens back to the bad old days when women were second-class citizens. But in my opinion, if a woman says something and the guy says something, their opinions are of equal weight. She says he did. He says he didn't. I can't prove it either way, so we can't go with this to destroy the man's career.
I'm sorry, it's not he say, she say when it's documented by the therapist.
Two therapists.
Well,
Two therapists. Just because it's being brought up now doesn't refute what happened. It doesn't change what happened.
well,
It does take a lot of women to come.
He can
it
go-
takes a lot from a woman to come out about something like that publicly.
he could go to a therapist and say it didn't happen. Then what? Then
He wasn't the one who was sexually assaulted.
Then his therapist will say he feels wrongfully
It's not
accused.
enough to go to a therapist and say that you didn't do something. A therapist is going to go off body language, the things that you say, the things that you don't say, body gestures, everything like that. They're very qualified with their jobs.
Yeah. Well, again, she could be. It's true that she went to a therapist over it, and frankly, it would have been more believable if she'd gone to the police and if there was
That's
DNA.
Well, yeah, more believable if there were DNA,
Yeah,
but they didn't
yeah.
do DNA in 1983.
And also, he says he didn't do it. Why are we to assume that he's lying? Why, what, and also, there are 65 women that say he would never have done such a thing. Are they all liars too? So only the woman that says that you did grope her is the one telling the truth. The other 65 women that say he was a gentleman, those women can't be believed.
So
I thought we were only believing women here.
in high school, he only raped roughly 1 out of every 66 women.
He didn't rape her. He rolled around on her.
He only attempted to.
According to her, it was a groping at a drunken party.
With him lying on top of her and putting his hand over her mouth so she couldn't scream.
Rick,
Oh, also, wait, my fingers are slightly more purple than they ought to be in real life because of trying to dye the pants to get you the colored pants you wanted. So you don't need to necessarily adjust color.
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm wondering if an issue here is, I'm curious as to why was it Senator Feinstein, or was it Feinstein?
Feinstein.
Why she waited to the very, very last minute to bring this out and not do it.
According to what I've read, it's that she was trying to respect the confidentiality
Oh, God.
of, maybe there's political maneuvering, but what I read said that the woman didn't want to come forward, and it's only today that the woman decided she needed to come forward, though she didn't want to because she knew that she'd be dragged through the muck, and that her life would, it's typically what happens to women who go public with accusations of sexual assault.
I'm going to say something even more controversial, and that is this. Apparently, let's say he did grope her in high school. Does that mean he could never hold a job in his 50s?
Well, it means that,
That was 40 years ago, Rick.
well,
I mean, does anybody ever get reformed? So if you do something that is at that time, I think, a misdemeanor, you roll over a girl at a party, if you do that, you should never be able to hold a job, even when you're in your 50s?
Depends on the
let's go to the big
You
announcement I was
mean
going to.
morally? You mean morally? Someone can reform and change.
Can't they change?
I'm sure
Has he led an exemplary life since
But
then?
it depends on
It
the
depends.
state if they will allow him to have.
No,
that
but no, I'm just saying,
privilege.
guys, we're all adults here, okay?
Right.
Now, nobody wants women to be groped against their will. But supposing a 17-year-old guy gropes a woman, and after that, for the next, what's 52 minus 17?
35.
For the next 35 years, he lives an exemplary life.
Well, let me make a big announcement right here.
Wait. Let's
Wait,
just.
I want to hear what Lance is.
So what I'm saying is, do we ever forgive a guy for groping a woman when he's a teenager?
Well, you maybe
Did he
want the
just grope
guy.
her or rape her?
No, he groped
attempt-
her.
Did he attempt to rape her?
We don't know.
He got on top of her.
He got on. They were both fully dressed, and he got on top of her at a party. They
He
were
put his
both,
hand over her mouth
and
so
they
she
were
couldn't
both drunk.
scream.
Let me tell you something. They were rolling around drunk. That's the way it's described. It was a party. Everybody was drunk. He was rolling around on her. She says he groped her. Now, how many guys
kind
in
of-
the United States would never be able to hold a job again? Are you saying that every man, when he was a teenager, should not be able to hold a job in his 50s because he rolled around on a girl at a party
No.
when he was a teenager
But-
that did not want him to?
But you'd expect a guy who's in line for a lifetime appointment for a job where his judgment is of paramount importance, because he's one of the most important judges in the land. You'd expect a guy not to lie about it.
What if he's? What if he? What if,
What am I looking at here?
perception of whatever the guy had. Was there a therapist involved? I'm asking. Was there a therapist involved? Did she go see therapy?
Yes. It wasn't specifically about this. One of the therapists was a couples counselor, and it came out in couples counseling. The quote from her says, "I thought he might inadvertently kill me." From the climbing on and the various. So she was not happy with the situation. Now, let me make the big announcement that you want me to make. I'm seriously considering running for Studio City Town Council. And as a potential future politician, I should come clean about my sexual misbehavior. And so the worst thing I've ever done, all right, well, this wasn't my doing, but in roughly 1984, I was present at what I feared was going to be a gang rape. And I was getting ready to jump in and stop the rape when somebody who was more respected by the group of potential rapists came along and said, "Hey guys, cut it out," and diffused the rape. So, I mean, so I was mostly blameless in that, but I didn't get the opportunity to stop the rape, which didn't happen. But I was at, you know, so anyway, I mean, that was a not great thing, but my behavior was not terrible in that, even though I was one of many people who were naked, but that's a longer story.
And since you're running for office, you have to tell people.
All right, here's the deal.
Model. You
Here's
need a
the
model.
Yeah.
Some people won't like that.
Well, no, here's the, like, when I was a bouncer, I was kind of a wuss as a bouncer, and I had to do other things to convince people that I was a good bouncer, because I wasn't good at punching people out, but I was good at getting punched. So I try to talk condescendingly to drunks until they punched me, and I would do stuff at parties to show my manliness, like I would eat the necks off of beer bottles, and I had no problem getting naked, which people thought was crazy, and part of, you know, being respected as a bouncer was being crazy. And these guys had gotten a drunken woman to come with them back to this hotel that had a bar where we all worked, and everybody was skinny dipping. So a bunch of guys are in the pool, and the girl is also skinny dipping in the pool, I believe. I don't know if she was wearing anything. I don't remember if she was wearing anything or not, but the guys were all naked, and I was naked too, because I thought that would, you know, give me credibility when I had to step in and stop what looked like it was going to turn into a gang rape. And it was at the point where at least two of the guys were getting closer and closer to the woman in the pool and doing the Donna, 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 Donna theme from Jaws. And at this point, I'm about ready to go, guys, that's enough. And who knows whether they would have listened to me or not. But a guy that was friends with these guys, from back in their hometown, who was working as a security guard, comes along with his uniform and flashlight and shines a light, goes, "Hey, guys, what's going? Cut it out." And that diffused it. So.
Is that the same story?
What?
Is that the difference?
No, that's the same story.
Wait a minute.
Mayor Rick.
Why are you're running for?
Studio City has a town council, and if I'm going to have the courage of my convictions and take that into politics,
I understand. That's
all right.
great. Why are you running for town council?
Well, because what do I do here with my opinions? Nothing. Like, you know, some people watch our show. Does it change anybody's mind? Does any change get affected?
So what are you going to do if you're the head of if you're on the town council? What will you try to affect?
I don't know. Maybe stuff that I think is dangerous or stupid, like
Trump.
Well, I can't do anything about Trump from Studio City, but I can maybe I can fight for laws if you're walking across the street while looking at a digital device or texting, maybe you get a fine. If you're driving while I don't even know if town council can do stuff like that.
You're going to be like.
Maybe they can't do that. Maybe you can only put up signs that says, "Hey, watch where you're walking instead of looking at your phone, asshole."
And you're going to be the most transparent candidate in history.
Yeah, so I'll talk about the worst thing the rapiest thing I ever did.
Oh my God.
It's not really rape, but during my first senior year in high school, my real senior year in high school, class of '78,
How many times did you go to high school?
3 times, 4 times, depending on how you. I went to high school a lot. My senior year, I thought would be great in that I thought I would finally get a girlfriend. I was student body co-president. You know, I had the highest SATs in the school. I was super active in a bunch of stuff. I thought somebody would say, "Hey, that's a prominent guy. You know, maybe somebody would like me." By the end of the year, by May of that year, I started falling apart academically in October. Because I couldn't get a girl, because I was super disappointed. I couldn't win a girlfriend, and I quit studying, and I quit even waking up and going to class. And by the end of the year, my grades were in ruins. I was no longer going to college. I decided I was going to go back to high school in another town and see if I could get a girlfriend. I was a crazy mess. And I took a girl I barely knew to prom, and I was kind of just angry and out of control. And we were slow dancing at the after prom, and I got a boner, and I pressed it into her. And I didn't know the girl very well, but I knew that she wouldn't welcome that, but I didn't care. I pressed my boner into the girl. Not inside, just, in clothes. I'm wearing jeans, she's wearing jeans. But I rubbed up against her with my boner. And I did that one other time within that same month at a graduation party. And I regret it. The unsolicited, through clothes boner rubbing was a little bit sexual assaulty. And I take responsibility for it, and I regret it, and I apologize.
On behalf of all women, we appreciate
Thank you.
that apology. Thank you.
Thanks.
Lance?
I'm not going to be doing any slow dancing with Rick. And I know that playful wrestling I thought was going on between him and me is perhaps also to be avoided. So as long as we're confessing, all right. So now, wait a minute. I want to understand this. So you're actually going to file to? How does this go?
We'll see.
When did you get this into your head?
Like a year or two ago, and then I looked at it and I thought, boy, this would be a huge pain in the ass and waste of time, and wouldn't result in anything.
Okay.
Good. But if it helps the show, and if I can help Studio City, then maybe I'm considering it.
But I mean, what would your responsibilities be?
I don't know, to sit in meetings and to stay awake and to vote on stuff, to bring up suggestions.
Well, I think he's going to be the most transparent. He's going to be like the liberal Donald Trump.
Oh, let me be even more transparent. That I've been really lucky with regard to my penis that it doesn't work very well. That there have been less move. This is also like the previous week is where we do this on a Sunday, so it's the beginning of a new week, so it screws it. But a few days ago, Les Moonves had to resign as head of CBS because he did a bunch of he sexually assaulted a bunch of women, including ejaculating into the mouth of his doctor, I believe.
Oh, for God's sake!
He did. I believe
How could you
With the
do
gun to her
something? How could you do something like
he
that?
grabbed her, I guess, and pulled her down, and then kashplooey.
Kashpui.
Yeah, and also Louis C.K. returned to the comedy stage and a couple weeks ago, and his offense against women, his sex creep thing, was masturbating to orgasm in front of aspiring comedians.
Was this doctor a urologist?
Who knows? I don't know.
Because I was thinking, what were the circumstances? I mean, how could you get away with something like that?
He's a big
And
shot.
why didn't she close her mouth at the last second?
Maybe she didn't know what was going to happen.
What?
I mean, well, no, because like if he's got some good moves, it's like good. I don't know. You don't expect to be sexually assaulted by, and maybe I misunderstood the story or misread it, but like he sexually assaulted his own doctor. Doctor.
Doctor. That's why I'm saying
Doctor.
maybe it was a urological exam. You
In
know,
the
maybe she was supposed to be down there
I don't know.
already.
But anyway, it's
So she
now-
didn't have the time to jump out of the way.
Maybe, but I mean, it's a terrible thing, regardless of how he actually physically did it.
That guy should be in prison. Now that guy should not be on the Supreme Court.
No, but-
even if Trump
But the
nominates
deal is
him,
now
I will not support that guy.
the theory of the feminist theory of rape, at least when I was in school
That guy should be
20,
in
30
prison.
years ago, is that rape is a crime of power rather than of sex. That you're attempting to assert power over the victim.
Very true.
Yeah.
Even men get raped in the military. They're
Yeah. So I mean,
cases of that.
nothing's more
Humiliating.
humiliating and asserting of I've got power over you than sexual assault.
Your body. This.
Yeah. But I would assert that there is a sexual component to it, and I'd like to thank my junk for not working very well, because it would be physically impossible for me to
Rape someone. What?
well, no, it'd be impossible for me to pull some move where grab head and then within 2 seconds splooey. Because
Really?
it takes just so much work to get my thing to work. And in this era of Me Too, I'm glad that not that I've had thoughts of attacking people, but that the logistics of it would be frickin' impossible.
You got his ring.
You know what? I'm walking off this show.
Oh my.
That's it. I can't. I feel violated. I feel. You know what? Hey, you know what? I can turn this. I can save this show. I can save this show by saying something, by bringing up a serious subject.
All right.
As a Republican, I believe that if it's proven beyond a doubt that a violent rape has occurred, and it's not, you know, it's all very clear, I think that the rapist should be executed. I believe execution for rape is a reasonable punishment, because it's people are getting 6 months in jail for that. They're getting, you know, a few years, and I think it's worthy of execution. That's how much against it I am. And the liberals that I talk to say, well, you know, maybe a few months.
No bullshit. Not the liberals.
All right,
It's not about party.
Rick, supposing somebody, a total stranger, jumps out of the bushes, rapes a woman, and it's caught on camera. So it's absolutely
You're
no
talking,
question.
you know, traditionally.
Ideal conditions for
Stranger
proving
rape,
guilt.
stranger
yeah,
rape.
Yeah.
Well, I think you have to consider the
What should the penalty be?
years in prison.
How many years?
Many years. I don't know. Many years. But
What
it's nothing to do
what
with the
about
party.
yeah? But what about execution? Why not execution?
Well, for one thing, you have to consider the larger societal structure and problems with the death penalty. Now, would the death penalty for some rapes dissuade people, lower the instances of rape, the rate of rape? Maybe, I don't know if it's shown to do that. And
Okay, can I answer?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, in a case like that, yes, that person should get many years in prison. If that person is a serial rapist, then yes, that person should get the death penalty, because that person doesn't care about life. And any person who doesn't care about life, in my opinion, doesn't deserve their own.
That seems like a reasonable argument. However,
So whether you're a Democrat or Republican, forget the party line. Forget that. As an individual, as a person, I would say that person needs years to life.
Yeah, and you say they should be executed.
well, there are
No, if a man jumps out the bushes,
yeah.
no, if a man jumps out the bushes and rapes a woman,
Yeah.
I believe that he needs some years. I would say at least 20 or more. But if it's a serial rapist, if there's a man who's always jumping out of the bushes and always raping women, then that person should be executed because that person is a danger to society.
so
Does that make sense?
yeah, though I have a couple things about the death penalty. One problem I have with the death penalty is that it's perhaps not sufficiently retributive, whatever.
What does that mean?
It doesn't make the perpetrator suffer enough. Once the person's dead, their suffering is done.
That's the point. If the person is a serial rapist and just going around raping people, then who cares about their suffering? They just need to go.
Okay.
They just need to go. If it's a person who just committed one rape, then they need to suffer. They need to realize what they did, if
Well-
they can. Or who cares? Just suffer.
Yeah, it's also cheaper to keep people in prison for life than to keep people on death row.
I was thinking that, yeah.
Because you go through all the appeals and all that, and it takes
Yeah.
10 to
What
20.
what about justice? You guys are worried about the cost. You're worried about
Well, you can't-
whether he'll be reformed. What about justice for the woman?
Well, is justice for the woman better conveyed via the death penalty or via the person being in prison for the next 35 years and never getting out?
Death penalty. I think if a perfectly innocent woman is violated in that way, the person that did that does not deserve to live, and justice would be to take his life.
I disagree. I want to see the person who raped me suffer.
What
I would
if-
rather them live.
Well, I'm going to tell you a secret
I want
about
them
that.
to
Wait,
live.
I'll tell you a secret about that. They've done a lot of studies on this subject, and it turns out that overwhelmingly, prisoners would rather be alive in jail for 30 years than executed.
I'd rather them be alive in
No,
hell.
no, I know, but what I'm saying is the prisoners also want to be alive. Overwhelmingly, prisoners do not want to be executed.
That's
So
why I
you're
think torture should be legal. Is this still running? Is this camera still on?
all right. I'm trying to get a point across here.
I'm not
If
letting
you want to punish somebody, according to the people that are about to be punished, the prisoners, they would rather stay alive in prison than be executed.
Which is
So,
why.
so if your goal is to really hurt them, execute them.
No, because when you're dead, you're dead. You can't feel anything. That's why I'm
It's
saying
the
torture.
problem. It's the problem with
If
the movie.
someone raped me, I want them to be tortured for life.
We've
Which
talked.
to me is better than death, because when you're dead, you're dead. You don't feel anything.
It's the problem with every, like, the movie Bad Boys, for instance, is typical, where they chase down, there's a big car chase, I think, and they have the bad guy, and they take him down, and he's down, but they've caught him. He's going to prison for a long time because he's super bad. But he turns out to have a hidden gun on the small of his back or on his ankle. He pulls out the gun, and then the Bad Boys,
Will Smith, Martin Lawrence.
Martin Lawrence, bam, 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 bam. They shoot him 20 times, and now he's dead. And it's like, well, what's that? You got him. He was going to suffer in prison, but no, now he's dead. His suffering's over. He didn't have to go to trial. It's like it's too easy.
No, the truth is, the reason that they do that in all these movies is because the audience wants the guy to be dead. It's because deep down, everybody in that audience knows that for there really to be justice, the person should be executed. And the audience, don't interrupt me, the audience will not be satisfied with this guy serving a 20-year term in prison. So deep down, I think human beings, if the average person was shown a film of what the guy did, they would support the death penalty more.
Well, I have one more
Wait,
point.
no, you're not
right.
letting me finish my
All
point.
right, all right.
Because what happens is this: when you see the guy in jail or at trial, he's already done his thing, and he may look contrite. He may look innocent. He may look like your kid brother. But if you saw him doing his crime against an innocent person, your blood would boil like it does when you're watching a movie, and you would be more likely to support the death penalty.
All right, so I have one more point, which is how would the death penalty for certain rapes change the landscape of reporting and prosecuting rape?
Well, the problem is that there are two issues. The first is it would be more likely that the rape victim would be murdered during the event to prevent her from squealing.
That's not good.
And the second problem is you can't bring back torture.
Very true.
Because if you bring back torture, then you have a class of people that are now responsible for torturing people, and that's just, we're kind of beyond that in this civilization.
All right, so adding the death penalty for rape.
Logically, no, I have to be logical. I can't just say we're beyond that. We can't have a class of people that are professional torturers.
All right, so adding the death penalty might make it worse for reporting and prosecuting rape.
It might be, but I think it's justice. I'm only saying what is fair, and I don't think 5 years in prison is adequate justice.
Well, the death penalty for rape is not going to happen, so it's hypothetical. But
Something
yes.
happened, and it's kind of related. First of all, would it be logical for it to be the choice, pro-choice of the woman that got raped to determine the sentence, whether it's death penalty or how many years is one option.
Interesting.
That would really be pro-choice. And then secondly, I would like for everyone to comment on this. Chelsea Clinton made some news this past week, and she was saying that people that are pro-life, that's not Christian of them. Do you want to comment on that, Rick?
What did Chelsea Clinton mean when she said that being pro-life is not Christian?
In other words, that if you criticize and that you're putting down people that are pro-choice, that's not Christian-like. It's being mean to people that are pro-choice.
That's a good question.
I mean, I don't find it a persuasive argument. It's not going to change anybody's mind.
You don't have to be persuasive.
I agree that there are people who are anti-choice, who are pretty intolerant.
So is that anti-Christian, being anti-choice? I mean, being pro-life? Is that?
I don't know.
That's what Chelsea said.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, what's that going to do?
I believe so, because what is this Republican law that overturns Roe v. Wade, that if you want to get an abortion and it's past the third trimester, that it's illegal? Well, there are some women who don't even know that they're pregnant until that point, and they want to get an abortion.
Well,
after they've been raped or whatever the case may be. Like, is that still unchristian to want to get an abortion in the third trimester?
If you're 8 months along, that's a viable fetus, which is one criterion that.
I know it's rare because for me, if I'm 8 months pregnant, you would be able to tell. But there are women, usually, I don't want to fat shame, but there are bigger women who probably wouldn't be able to tell that they're.
I'm not a woman. I'm never going to be pregnant. But if you ask me, if somebody's 8 months along and they just then discover they're pregnant and there's nothing wrong with the pregnancy, then I have to say, well, you effed up, and you need to carry. It's late in the third trimester. You need to carry the baby to term, because I mean, for one thing, liberals are accused of approving, as long as the baby's in your body, no matter how, even if it's 39 and a half weeks, abortion on demand, which is not the point of view of 99% of liberals. So by supporting abortion on demand, for as long as somebody claims, they didn't know they were pregnant until that point, And again, I'm not a woman, and it's not, guys have limited agency, or should have limited, like, I shouldn't be the one deciding this necessarily.
Okay, does it cut into our tax dollars? That's my question. Does it cut into our tax dollars? Do we pay taxes for procedures like that, ultimately? When a woman wants to get an abortion, say if she's 8 months pregnant?
Yeah, sometimes, but I'd say that not letting the woman who just now discovers she's 8 months pregnant, not letting her get an abortion, I'd say that is more politically expedient in terms of keeping, liberal abortion laws available, around, than saying, yeah, go ahead, get rid of the baby because you claim you just found out about it.
Okay, I'm not religious. I'm pro mind your own business, basically. If it doesn't affect me personally, then I personally don't give a shit. Just to be honest.
But it's
so if it doesn't cut into my tax dollars.
But it's a tough landscape, and
I know it's complicated.
If somebody's 8 months pregnant and they can get the kid out of there and it's viable without like health complications, then maybe just give the kid up for adoption at 8 months or 9 months or whatever.
Or not. I don't care. Again, if it doesn't affect me, then I don't care. That's your body. That's your decision. That's your money that went into that procedure.
Okay. Do we have another topic? So I don't have to.
We've had lots of debates about abortion. In my opinion, it should be illegal in the third trimester.
Why?
Because it's a baby.
Is it your baby? Does it hurt you if she loses that baby?
The baby has rights of its own.
Why do you care about that baby's rights? There are kids at the border being taken physically from their parents.
Not anymore.
Not anymore because Trump changed his mind?
Trump changed that law months ago.
Oh, he changed his mind. So when that was in effect, how much did you care?
I didn't know about it, but it went into effect.
You didn't know about it?
It went into effect under Bill Clinton.
You paid so much attention to the news.
It went into effect under Bill Clinton, and it was carried out under Obama. Trump is the one that ended it.
He ended it.
He ended it.
So how many
First he made it harsher.
How many kids were taken physically from their parents under Obama versus under Trump?
Well, we still have 12,800 kids who've been.
Please tell me how
I don't know the exact number.
You don't know the exact number.
12,800 kids currently.
Well, the point is that Trump ended the policy.
It was less than 20 under Obama. Oh,
we can look
less than 20.
We can look it up.
We can look it up.
We can look it up. But my point is that the baby in the third trimester has its own rights to life.
And that baby is none of your business if it's not yours. Is what I'm saying.
Let me tell you something. If it was 1 year old, it would be my business.
Okay, so are the kids who are being physically taken from their parents, is that your business? How do you feel about that? You're talking about abortion. How do you feel about these kids being taken physically from their parents at the border? Let's talk about logic.
I think that at the border, the reason the policy was instituted
was because
under Clinton.
Okay.
The Ninth Circuit Court in California ruled that many children were being brought over as sex slaves, as kidnap victims, and as covers for Mexican gangs.
Really?
And so as they decided that it wasn't with every kid, it was with a small percentage, but they felt that it was too difficult to determine which kids were being brought over against the law,
Really?
Don't interrupt me, and which kids were legitimately with their parents. So they the Ninth Circuit under Clinton or Obama, I believe Obama, instituted a policy that the children would be separated until it could be determined who the true parents were.
Yes.
That policy was carried out under Obama and carried out under Trump until a fuss was raised over it. Trump ended the policy, and now facilities are being built that can house the entire group together. However, the problem of separating kids from possible kidnappers, possible slave traffickers, that still remains.
Look at the numbers, Lance, honestly. That many children, that many live children being taken away from their parents.
Yes.
You think there are if you look at the numbers, you think there are that many kidnappers of Mexican descent, many rapists, many drug dealers? If you say yes, that does make you a racist.
It was determined that Mexican gangs were bringing over children against their will and saying that they were their parents.
And Obama was carrying that policy out efficiently and effectively.
All right.
And Trump just went batshit crazy over it.
Well,
and tried to use that as an excuse. And you guys want to use that policy to justify that. That's disgusting.
The policy doesn't exist anymore.
Because there was such outcry, but there's still...
Well, because Trump wasn't even paying attention.
Oh, what a great president.
No,
to not pay attention to something so important.
It wasn't a big issue. I mean,
really? Not taking children from their parents, that's not a big issue?
It was done to protect the children. It was done to... No, it was done to protect the children. It was done
punitively.
It was done to protect the children.
Under Trump, it was done as punishment.
From child traffickers. According to the Ninth Circuit Court...
Yeah, but that was before Trump.
Yeah, but that was the policy.
Yeah, but then Trump enforced it punitively.
Let me finish my sentence. It was done to protect the children from child traffickers.
But not under Trump.
Yes, it was done to protect the children from child traffickers.
That many children? Seriously?
540 kids are still separated from their parents.
I wouldn't expect anything less from a man who said that Mexicans were rapists. I wouldn't expect anything less.
Every woman in the United States that is raped by an illegal alien should not have been raped, and it's your fault.
It's our fault. That's nothing compared to the white policemen who have murdered innocent black people. That's nothing compared to the young children who come into the school and murder a bunch of innocent children.
White policemen.
Nothing compared to it. Mexicans are the least of your worries. Mexicans are the least of your worries.
White policemen are more likely to shoot white men than black men.
That's statistically very untrue.
Statistically, that's true. Now, according to
untrue, and I've studied that many times.
According to Harvard,
according to the U.S. Census Bureau, that's untrue.
A study from a black professor at Harvard. It's more.
What about the rate of shooting whites versus blacks? There are more whites than blacks.
It's more likely under the same circumstances for a white policeman to shoot a white suspect than a black suspect.
Because
we can look up the study right now.
I don't need to look it up anymore. I've studied this. Fox News, all of that, I've studied it.
All right, let's look it up.
I'm banging my head. I don't need to look it up again.
I can prove it.
I know you do. I know you do. I
can prove it. I can prove it.
Hey, subscribe to our deal. Lance versus Rick on YouTube.
I'm looking up the study.
Yeah, we got 4 seconds left.
Stop. I'm looking up the study.
2, 1.
Done.
Bye.
Next time.
Volver, volver, volver a tus brazos otra vez. Llegaré hasta donde estés.
Shut up. This study was conducted by Harvard University economist Roland G. Fryer Jr., an African American. Produced the most surprising result of my career. Shooting the suspects. Police officers were more likely to fire without having first been attacked if the suspects were white.
What about all the other statistics?
Those were...
More likely to point their weapons or pepper spray them if the suspect were black.
Yeah, but we're talking about white shootings. Shootings by white officers